Parshas Vayera, the fourth parsha in the Torah.
Sorry, which one are it?
Vayera.
Vayera, yeah.
And it's probably one of the most, what we call seminal or fundamental foundations of the Torah, especially because it has the story of the Akedah. The Akedah is the binding of Isaac, which is at the end, and we'll get to that. That's really probably one of the most significant stories that you have in the Torah, right? And it has so much meaning, and we read it on Rosh Hashanah, and it's very, very special. But we'll follow it in order and see if we get to it. And it begins by saying, Vayera elav Hashem, and Hashem appeared to him, where? Ba'alone Mamre, in the woods that was owned by Mamre, V'hu Yoshev Pesach HaOhel, and he sat in the doorway of his tent, Kechom Hayom, at the hottest part of the day. So, of course, you know we're talking about Avraham. Will you close the door for me? Thanks. So, we're talking about Avraham. Avraham just had, so you know from last week, he was just circumcised. And he's no youngster, right? He's close to 100 years old. And he circumcises himself. And here we are on the third day from his circumcision, which the Talmud tells us is the most painful day. And when anybody has, according to our understanding, that when anybody has a surgery of any sort, the third day of the surgery is supposed to be the most painful, 3 days after. So I don't know if that's literally the case today. It could be, but certainly then it was. People could have changed, but this is certainly the case then. And here is Avraham 3 days after his surgery. He's an old man, and he's not sitting in his bedroom. He's not sitting inside in the shade. He's sitting outside his tent in the sun, right, in the hottest part of the day. So you think there's something wrong with this guy, right? Here he has this surgery. He's in a lot of pain. He's sitting outside in the sun. That's what it tells us so far. And Hashem appears to him. And then it says, and behold, there were 3 men standing before him, Vayar, and he sees them. Vayarates the cross them, and he runs after them. From the entrance of his house. And he bows down to them. So here he looks, Avraham is sitting. Here's what's happening. Avraham is sitting having a conversation with God. Rashi tells us God is coming to visit a sick person. That's what we do, right? We visit the sick. So he goes to go visit a sick person. So Avram's sick. So here you imagine God and Avram are visiting, and they're having a conversation. And Avram looks out and he sees these 3 men out in the distance. He stops his conversation with God. He says, hold on a second. I got to go greet these 3 people. Right? So he runs away. So they have to ask, what is he doing? God is talking to him. Right? God knows there's 3 people coming. So why are you stopping to talk from God? God's talking to you. He came to visit you, so to speak. And he's talking to you, and you stop it, and you run off to greet these 3 people. So here the Gemara tells us an interesting point. It says that it is greater to greet guests than it is to visit with God. Right? In other words, even if you have God, the presence of God is right with you. It is more special to run away from the presence of God to go greet people. In other words, then this is the rule coming from God. This is not, we didn't make this up. The Torah is telling us this, and God wrote the Torah. The Torah tells us that God wants to understand how important treating guests is, how nice it is, how you should do it, how significant it is. It's so significant that even if God himself is talking to you, it's more important to ask God to wait a minute and you go out and greet the guests. That's how important having guests is. Right? That's just a start. But it also has some funny things. Like, for instance, here it says Vayar, and he sees V'hine shlosha nashim mitzavim alav. Literally, colloquially, the way that we said it first is, and behold, there were 3 men standing there. But literally, it means there were 3 men standing above him. That's what it literally means. Mitzavim is to stand, alav is upon him or above him. So it's a funny expression. All right. So, but we'll hold it until a minute because it's going to get even hotter. So it says Vayaretz l'krasam b'Pesach HaOhel. So that Avraham, 3 days after his surgery, 100 years old, gets up and runs into the desert, right, from the entrance of his tent, so he can bow down to these people. V'yomer, and he says to them, Adoni, my master, Imna matzasichem enecha, if you would please, right? Literally says, if I find kindness in your eyes. But what it means is, if you would like, Al na ta'avor me al avadecha, don't pass me by. Yikach na mayim, take a little bit of water from me. V'rachasu ragleichem, wash your feet. V'hashienu takas eitz, and come and rest under the tree. V'yecho pas lechem, and come take a little bit of bread, take some bread. V'sadu livchem, and satisfy yourselves with, from being hungry. V'tavruki alkein avartam al avdechem, so you shouldn't pass by your servant, which is me. V'yomru kain, and they say, ta'aseh kasher divarta, okay, go ahead, do what you said. You want to go and give us a little bit of water and some bread? Go ahead, and we'll come. Vayimahir Avraham quickly goes into his tent, to Sarah, who's standing inside the tent. He says to Sarah, hurry up, you have to make 3 loaves of bread for me. He makes some bread. And then he goes to the cow. Avraham runs to the cow, and he takes this calf, the rach, which is still soft, it's like veal, right? V'tov, and it's good to eat. Vayiten al anar, and he gives it to the young boy. We're told this young boy here is Yishmael. Vayimahir lasoso, and he tells him, go quickly, prepare this animal so that we can give food to these people who are visiting. Vayikach chema, and he says, go and get some butter. V'cholav, and milk, v'ben bakar, and get the cow that you killed, asherasa, v'yitein lifnechem, and put it in front of them. V'hu omed aleim tachas eitz v'yichalehu, and he stands with them under the tree, and they eat. Oh, excuse me, there wasn't. How did we see that? Yeah. Okay. So there's a few problems with this. So here, Avraham. First thing, he goes inside, and Sarah's inside the tent. He says, Sarah, listen, we've got guests. Please make some fresh bread. Okay? Then he takes a cow. He gives it to the boy, right, his son, and he says, I want you to slaughter this cow so that we can have meat for our guests. Right? And then he goes and he gets the meat, and then he gets butter and milk and the meat, and he brings it all out together with the bread to give to the angels. Right? Well, we don't know they're angels, to the men. So there's a lot of problems with this. Problem number one is he says, I'll give you a little bit of water. Now come in and I'll give you a little bit of water. Instead, he doesn't give them any water. He doesn't say anything about water here. Right? And then it says that and then he gives them this enormous meal. Right? Take a little bit of water, but he gives them an enormous meal. So then the meal is milk and meat. Right? And we know Avraham kept the Torah. Right? Even though he didn't have to keep the Torah, and the Torah wasn't given, he understood through prophecy what the Torah said, and you can't have milk and meat together, and he has butter, milk, and meat. That's what he gives them, right? So that's another problem. And then the last problem, which we'll discuss first, comes from the last line, which says, and he was standing with them under the tree, and they ate. But that's not literally what it says. That's only how we translate it. What it really says, V'hu omed alehem, and he stood upon them, or over them, under the tree, and they ate. So first I told you that it says that they stood above him. And now it says he stands above them. So you can understand, him standing above them means like he's a waiter. He's standing and they're sitting. He's serving them. But the commentaries say that that's not what this means. The commentaries say that when Avraham began this process, these men, right, all he knows is these are regular men passing by. He's going to reach out to these men. He's going to give them something to eat and drink, and he's going to teach them about God. That's what he's going to do. Now, he goes, and it says that these men, whoever they are, were standing above him. That is to say, they were spiritual giants, these men. And they were much greater than Avraham. So they were standing above him. They were above him, like closer to God, because they were spiritual giants. Then at the end it says he was standing over them. And so the commentaries say, what happens between these two lines? Avraham does the mitzvah of hachnasas orchim, of inviting guests into his home and making sure they have the best food, fresh bread, freshly slaughtered, right, meat, right, the best of everything he gives them. And he says, I'm just going to give you a little bit of water. And he gives them a big, lavish meal. Right, and then it says, the Torah tells us, now Abraham, right, because of what he's done, he's even greater than them. He's standing above them. First they're standing above him, now he's standing above them. Now that's not literally, that is literally what it says, but that's not how one would normally translate it. Normally you would say, right, that He was standing with them, they were standing with him, but the literal words is telling you a hidden meaning. That spiritually, when a person has guests in their home, you take care of people who need it. Now guests in your home, you have to understand, what does that mean? And certainly it can mean you have a friend over, but in this case it's talking about a guest. It seems to be a guest in need. These are wandering Arabs wandering through the desert, right? And he's going to give them food because they don't have food, and they don't have a place to sleep, and they don't have water. They're in the desert, right? So he's doing something for them, and because he went and he did all of this, he gave his own food, his own water, his own everything to them. It showed how spiritually great he became, and therefore he's above them. But it's very problematic, and as we go through the problems, you'll see. But one of the greatest problems is we know who these men are. Do you know who these men really are? The Torah tells us later. They're angels. They're not men. God sends them for specific jobs, because God sends one of them called Raphael. You've heard of Raphael, the angel, right? Raphael, it means the healer of God. Rafua Kel, the healer of God. He comes to heal Abraham. That's job. God wants him to get better, so he sends an angel to heal him. Then he sends another angel. It says not just to heal him, but to tell him that you're going to have a baby. His name's going to be Yitzchak. You're going to have a baby. And a year from now, this is right before Pesach, it says you're going to have a baby. And they do, right? That's the second one. The third one comes to tell them that we're going to destroy Sodom. And you actually see this in here. But they're angels. They're not people, which means that God sent them with a specific job to do, and they do their job. But angels are not physical. Right? An angel is not a person. An angel is not a little fat guy with a bow and arrow who flies around. Right? An angel is simply the will of God. When God wants to do, like for instance, when you want to do something, like you want to pick up a pencil, so your brain thinks that your hand reaches out and picks it up. So when God wants to pick up a pencil, he has no body. How does God pick up a pencil? When he wants something to happen in this world, like he wants the grass to grow. He wants Avraham to get better. How does he cause that to happen? God thinks it, and it happens. Because God has no body. He doesn't have to tell his arm to do it like you and I do. So what is the act of God's thought doing a physical thing? That's called an angel. That's what an angel is. An angel is not like an entity. However, and it says that if an angel does his job, then he dissipates. He's gone. Because he's only the will of God. God's will is that this blade of grass should grow. He wills that blade of grass to grow. An angel comes and pulls it up, and the angel's gone. He's finished. He did his job. Except for a couple of angels. There's a few who never dissipate. They're always here, because they're always needed. And Raphael, the angel of healing, is always here. You always need healing. You have also the angel of death, the Malach HaMavis. He's always here, because there's always people dying. Right? You have the angel of war, Gabriel, of strength, of war, or of defense. There's always a need for that. So there's certain angels that always exist. But most angels will dissipate immediately. So when these people come, they're not people, they're angels. But they look like people. And they don't want, that's part of what God wanted. And that Abraham should think that they're people. And he should treat them like people. But here's the big problem. This story is the story for everyone throughout history. The story that if you want to teach your children, or you yourself want to have a role model, how do I do the mitzvah of inviting people into my home and feeding them? How do I do it correctly? You learn from Abraham. First thing he says, a little bit of water, right? And what does he give them? A whole big meal. And the water wasn't even for drinking. The water he gave them was to wash their feet, because this type of person, they played to idols, and they said even the dirt on their feet was something that they would pray to. So Abraham wanted them to get rid of all the idol worship before they came in. So he offers them some water. That's why you don't see him drinking water, because they use it to wash. Right? So then they do it. Then what do? He gives them fresh bread. He gives them tongue. It'll tell us later. He gives them tongue, which means he had to kill 3 animals, because he had to give each one a tongue. Right? So that's a lot. And so he does all these things. This is to teach us what do you do when you invite someone to your house for a meal? How do you treat them? What do you do? So here he has a case, and Abraham teaches. This is the example for all of history. All Jewish people are going to learn from this example. But there's a problem with this example. Angels don't eat. They don't eat. They're not hungry. They have no stomachs. They have nothing. They're just a facade. They're a smokescreen. They're here to do a specific job. They're not physical like you and me that we have to eat. So here the example the Torah gives us of inviting someone into your home and giving them a meal are three people who don't eat. In fact, as we go through it, the commentaries show us how they hid the food. They made it go down their sleeve so that it looked like they were eating, because he didn't want Abraham to be embarrassed. So he pretended that they were eating. So, but of all of the examples that God could give us of inviting someone into your home and giving them a meal, he gives us an example where it doesn't do any good. He doesn't give them any. They're not eating, right? You know, it's like, I want to give you an example. Here's the perfect example of what you do to invite somebody to your home. You invite somebody who has no food and they need food to eat, and you invite them into your home and you tell them, I'm going to give you this, this, and this, and you get them to come, so they shouldn't think that you're going out of your way, and then you go out of your way. Right? You do everything you can to make them happy. You give them special food, you let them know how important they are, and you do all of these things. Right? That's what the Torah tells us. But then the example they give us, the people were as hungry when they left as when they got there, which is not at all. And they don't eat, and they never eat. So what kind of an example is this? This is an example that Abraham was wasting his time. He didn't do any good. Nobody got any benefit from what he did. Right? It's very similar to later on. One of the angels says we're going to destroy Sodom. Right? So Abraham pleads with him, don't destroy Sodom. If there's 50 righteous people in Sodom, maybe you'll save it. The guy says, sure. And he works his way down until he says, if there's 10 righteous people in Sodom, will you save it? So the angel speaking for God says, yeah, we won't destroy Sodom. If there's 10 kosher people in all of Sodom, we won't destroy it. I won't destroy it. And there weren't. So it got destroyed. So here you have Abraham pleading, and it doesn't do any good. He's wasted his time. Nothing happened. They got destroyed. So here you have two examples of Abraham doing things for us to learn, and in both examples, nothing came from it. So the answer to that is a very important answer. When it comes to doing an act of kindness for someone, inviting them to your home, visiting the sick, whatever it is, an act of kindness, the effect on you is much greater than the effect on the people. When you invite someone to your home for a meal, you fed them, right? And they were hungry. Now they're not hungry, and that's terrific. That's a good thing. But in the real picture, you got more out of this than they did. You get all of the spiritual reward, which is a currency which is much better than simply food. You gain. It says the rich person gains more from giving to the poor than the poor person gains. That's what the Talmud says, right? And this is an example of it. Here, the fact is that these people didn't eat. Nevertheless, that's God says it makes no difference. Your job is to take care of people. If nothing comes of it, nothing comes of it, but you put in the effort. If they don't eat, or they do eat, if you put in the effort, you do your best you can. And that's how I'm going to count it. So therefore, the angels didn't eat. That's made it the perfect example for us. Because when people come to my house and they eat, right? So that's very nice that they ate. I get a certain amount of pleasure out of the fact that they ate the food and they liked it. In this case, there was no pleasure from eating the food. It was totally done because it was the right thing to do. And the fact was that even though they didn't gain from it, it was still a very good thing to do. And we should know that even if someone comes to your house and they have no gratitude, they are ingratitude, right? And they're rude. Nevertheless, you fulfill the mitzvah of inviting them and giving them something. Even if you think nothing good came of it, something comes of it. And that's what we learn from this story. And same thing with praying. When you pray that somebody should be better, right, who's sick, when you pray that something should happen that you want, and it doesn't happen, so it wasn't a wasted prayer. There was a reason for the prayer. It's just you didn't get the answer you wanted, right? But it wasn't a waste. It made you a better person. It made you a more sensitive person, a more caring person. You turn to God. It's not always what we want is what's best, right? But it wasn't a wasted prayer. I tell you, there's a famous story about Rav Shach. Rav Shach was the head of the Panovich Yeshiva in Bnei Brak, and he died a few years ago already. But when he was a younger man, they tell a story that it was like probably in the 60s or 70s. I don't remember the year because I wasn't planning to tell the story now, but it fits. They said that he once gave a speech about the importance of outreach, which nobody was, in the 60s, nobody was doing outreach, reaching out to non-religious Jews. The religious community was so small as it was, and they seemed like they were under attack all the time. So, they weren't doing anything like that. But he said, no, there's a mitzvah to reach out to people, and you have to try to do whatever you can to try to educate them and let people understand that there's a God and what the purpose is and what God expects from us. So afterwards, it says that the media picked this up. It was published in the newspaper, it was in the radio, and there were some Jews on a kibbutz. And back then, you had different kinds of kibbutzes, but the most common kibbutz was an anti-religious kibbutz. Kibbutzes had nothing to do with religion. Right? They were not very good places for religious people. They were, in general, not all of them, but some of them, were based on an anti-religious philosophy. And shows up at the door of Panovitz Yeshiva the next day are two kibbutzniks, with the bucket hats and the sandals and their shorts. These two young guys show up, and at the yeshiva, they've never seen such a thing in their life at this yeshiva in Bnei Brak, and they say, we want to learn Torah. And they don't know what to do. Here's these yeshiva guys. They've never spoken to someone who wasn't religious back then. They had no idea what to do. So they went and they asked Rabbi Shach, who was the head of the yeshiva, what do we do? So he tells them, you go and teach them this, this, and this. And after they leave, right, for today, come see me. So they go and they teach them, and they have a very nice time. And the guys learn, and they're going to come back. They leave, and they're going to come back next week. And they go in to see the rabbi. And the rabbi says, I'm going to tell you. He says, these guys came. Don't fool yourself to think they came because of my speech. That's not why they came. He said that when I was a child in Europe before the war, he said that it was horrible for many Jews. In Europe, people were starving to death. I'm not talking about the Nazi era, or before then. Jews were starving to death, and the rules, the world was against the Jews, and the Tsar was against the Jews, and the governments were against the Jews. And even though it wasn't the Nazi era, it was terrible. So all the Jews tried to find ways to get better. They came up with socialism, they came up with communism, they came up with the Bund, and all these different types of political philosophies that they'd adhere to, instead of staying religious as Jews, because they wanted to help people. Communism was going to feed everybody. Socialism would feed everybody, right? Nobody would be poor. So they said, we want this. We're Jews. We want everyone should have. So they were all supporting it. So what happened is the older generation remained religious, and the younger generation left. And the parents used to go in late at night into the synagogues. They'd open the ark and would cry to God, the situation they're in. They can't provide food for their family, and not only they can't do that, but their family are leaving Judaism. Right? How can we do this to us? And they're so sad, and they're asking God to help them. Right? So he says to them, he says, you think that those prayers weren't answered? You think they didn't do anything? So that their kids maybe are gone, but you just met their grandchildren. Those are two guys that came here from the kibbutz. Not literally the grandchildren, they weren't particular people, but the point was their prayers were heard. God heard their prayers. He didn't answer them like this and say, okay, your son's going to turn around. Right? It happens. The tears of the Jews, the prayers of Jews may appear sometimes not to do anything, but they do. And so to now, 30 years, 40, 50 years later, the grandchildren of those people are coming back to Judaism because their grandparents stood in the synagogues in all these little cities around Europe and cried because their kids left Judaism. And now God brought them back. Right? So you see, just like here, where we say Abraham went and he prayed for Sodom, and yet Sodom was destroyed, that he's wasting his time. He's not wasting his time. Not only does it have an effect on him, but in the long term there is an effect. Things do happen. When a person prays, there is an effect. It's not always the way you want, it's not always immediate, but there is an effect. So that's one of the points here. So as we go in now, how is it that he gave them milk and meat? How is that possible? So first thing is, they were angels, they didn't eat. But he didn't know that, right? That's an important point. He didn't know they were angels. He thought they were people. So firstly is, a non-Jew's allowed to eat milk and meat, right? So they weren't Jewish. He wasn't Jewish either, but at least he was keeping it. The second thing is that he gave them first milk and then meat. You notice it says gave them butter and milk and then meat. So really, while the law is for you and me, you're not supposed to have milk and meat in the same meal. Like if you sit down for a meal and you decide, okay, I'm going to have a glass of milk and some cheesecake, and then we'll have the meat. So you're not eating it together, and you know that if you eat, like you drink milk, you don't have to wait 6 hours or something before you have meat. But the law is that so you shouldn't, get confused and do things wrong. You shouldn't have it in the same meal. But that's a rabbinic law that was added to help make a fence around it for us. But in those days, they didn't have it. So here, Abraham says to them, I'm going to give them a meal, give them milk and then meat. right? Because this is what you give somebody. It's a respected person. I'll give them, good milk. It's good for them, and I'll give them meat. So how he's able to do it, these are all examples. So there's one Kabbalistic answer that's, I don't know if it's a serious answer or not, but if you look closely at the words here, it says that he tells the boy to go and to slaughter this animal. And it says so. And it says Vayikach chema v'cholav, and Abraham goes and he takes. This is the second to last line. Take butter and milk, uben habakar asher asa, and then it says, and the child of the cow, right, the calf, meaning which he prepared. So which the boys prepared, right? But asher asa also, which means he made. Right? In other words, there are those in the Kabbalists who say that Abraham created this calf. It wasn't a calf like a normal calf, because he didn't have one. So he used his understanding of Kabbalah, which Avraham was a giant. He could do this, and he created a calf. So they can slaughter the calf and give it to him, right? So if he made a calf, right, that's not meat. He made it. It's not God. A cow isn't real. This is not real. This is made from Abraham. He created it using incantations. That's what they say. I mean, I'm not a big fan of that concept, but that's what it says. But I think the important thing to understand here is that even though they didn't benefit directly from what he did, nevertheless, this is the perfect example of what it means, that even when you invite someone over and they don't seem to benefit, you have to realize that you benefit, and you're still doing it, even if in the end they didn't gain anything from it. You invite someone to your house and they say, I'm sorry, I'm vegetarian, all right? Or I'm sorry, you have this type of kosher, I eat this type of kosher. So you still did the effort, you still did it, and you're rewarded for it. So then it goes on. Now we have another few very famous stories. And he says here, V'yomer love, and they say to him, Eye Sarah ishtecha, where's Sarah, your wife? Where is she? Right, they're sitting at the table eating. And where's your wife? V'yomer hine bovel, oh, she's in the tent. He says, V'yomer shuv eshuv alecha ki es chaya v'hine ben l'sara ishtecha. And he says, so the angel says, I'm going to come back to you the same time of year next year, right? And there will be a son to Sarah, your wife. Okay, so remember I told you there were 3 angels, so each one has a job. Right? One was to cure Abraham. One of them is to tell him that his wife's going to have a baby, which is a miracle. And according to our tradition, Sarah did not have a womb. She didn't have a uterus. She had a birth defect, so she couldn't have children. Not just she couldn't have because there was something wrong, small. It was impossible. And yet here she was, an old woman, right? Already, if she had ever menstruated, she was no longer menstruating at this time of her life, and these angels come and tell her, this time next year your wife's going to have a baby, right? So what does she do? So it says what she does. She hears them. She's in the other room, right? But there's a tent. It's not like a big house. So she hears them. So it says, V'Sara shamat, and Sarah heard them, Pesach Owel, from the entrance of the tent. V'hu acharav, and he's standing on the other side. The Avram v'Sara zikenim, Abraham and Sarah are old. V'bayim b'yomim, they have lived many days, meaning many years. V'chad alios l'Sara orach kanashim, and already Sarah no longer has the way of women. That is, she no longer menstruates. She's beyond that age. V'titzchak Sarah, and Sarah laughs. This is absurd, right? She laughs. I'm going to have a kid. I don't have a womb. I don't menstruate. I've never had a child. I've been married to this man all these years, and now I'm going to have a child. So she laughs, bikirba, but she doesn't, not out loud. She laughs within herself, right, out of respect. More, and she says, Achri bilti isili adoni ve'adoni zaken. Now I'm going to have a child, and my husband's so old. Right? This is how she says, my husband's an old man. He's 100 years old. I'm going to have a child now with this guy. He's 100 years old. Who has children at 100 years old? Right? I've never had a child before. Right? If he was 20 years old and I'm 20 years old, maybe there's a chance. Okay, I don't have a womb, but who knows? Right? But now my husband's 100 years old. We've been married all these years. We have no children. So she's like, this is absurd. So she's laughing. Right? But she says, my husband is old. Now the scene changes. Okay, now we have a different scene. And listen, this is an amazing scene. V'yomer Hashem, and God says to Avraham, Lama zetzchaka Sarah. What is Sarah laughing about? Why is Sarah laughing? What, she finds it funny? This is funny that she's going to have a child? More, that she would say, and this is what she laughed about, God says, Ha'af unam elad v'ani zekanti. I'm going to have a child. I'm old. So here God goes to Abraham and he says, you know your wife, she heard that she's going to have a child, and she laughed. She thought it was absurd. Like, it's not possible. And she you know what she said? She says, how am I supposed to have a child? I'm an old lady already. How am I supposed to do that? Now, you and I know she didn't say that. She didn't say that. She said, my husband's an old man. Not, I'm an old lady. But God's telling him that's what she said. So what's the deal there? So basically this is what's going on. God can do anything, right? God can do anything. If he wants to give a 100-year-old woman a baby, he can give a 100-year-old woman a baby. If this woman could never have children, she could also have children. If this woman was old, she could still have children. If her husband's old, she can still have children. God can do anything, right? So God realizes that Sarah has a flaw. There's a flaw in her understanding, because she found it was so absurd that she should have a child that she couldn't believe it. And not only because she's no longer menstruating, but also because my husband's 100 years old. He's an old man, right? He's not going to have children with me. So what is God bothered by? God's bothered by the fact that she doesn't believe that God can do this for her. And God can do anything. So Sarah has a misunderstanding. Right? The fact that she said my husband is old has nothing to do with the problem. The problem is that she didn't believe that God could do this. So when God goes to Abraham and says, listen, you know that I can do anything, but you have to tell this to your wife. Now, if God tells Abraham really what Sarah said, what's Abraham going to do? He's going to get insulted. He's going to feel bad. My wife thinks I'm old. No man wants to hear that his wife thinks he's an old man, right? You want to know that your wife still sees you as a handsome, virile person, not as an old man. So if God says to him, your wife laughed and said, my husband's so old, how can I have children? Right? Abraham is going to think less of his wife, and he's going to feel bad. And there's no reason to make him feel bad, because the important thing is not that she said that he's old, is that she questioned how she could have a child. So God changes it, and he says, Sarah made a mistake, and she thinks I can't give her a child because she's so old, but I can, and I will. Right? So I want you to talk to her. She should understand what God can do. The fact that if he would tell her the truth, they'd have a fight, so to speak. Not necessarily, but the average person would have a fight. My wife, what are you going around telling people I'm old? Right, I'm too old to have children with you? That's what you think? Right? You get offended. So God does this. There's no reason to cause that. So here you have one of the first examples of what we're going to see throughout this entire book of Bereshit, where somebody doesn't tell the truth. God doesn't tell the truth here, right? This is not the truth. She didn't say this. She did not say, I'm too old. She said, my husband's too old. Right? And you're going to find a number of examples that we go through. And the answer as to how it's possible is a very interesting answer. If you ever look at the Ten Commandments, the Ten Commandments says, don't steal, don't murder, right? Don't kidnap, don't. So there's a law in the Torah, right, that you're not supposed to lie, right? Don't lie. It doesn't say don't lie in the Torah. It says, "B'dvar sheker tirchak." From a lie, you should distance yourself. So it's not the same thing as don't lie. And what's the difference? What it means is sometimes it's a mitzvah to lie. Sometimes it's the right thing. Sometimes you can't lie, and sometimes you have to lie. And what is that? So you can't lie in a situation where you're lying because you don't want to have a problem for yourself. You asked me to call somebody for you, so arrange a hotel room, and I didn't do it. So you come to me, everything's all set? Yeah, everything's all set. Great, you're all right. And you go off to stay in the hotel, and there's got no reservation for you. You have nowhere to stay now. You call me up. What happened? What do you mean, what happened? I called him. But I didn't really call him. I'm lying to you. Why am I lying? Because I don't want to get in trouble. I made a mistake. I forgot to call. So I'm lying. So you can't lie like that. That's self-serving lying, because it's only to help me or it hurts somebody else. But there are times when lying helps somebody else, and then you're supposed to lie. Like, for instance, There's somebody comes to you and they say, I just bought this outfit in the store and it was on sale. It's a $500 outfit. I got it for $50. I can't return it. It's how it goes with the sale. But I really like it. What do you think? And you look at that outfit and it's horrendous. It makes her look terrible. Terrible. Right? Now, if you tell her that that this is a terrible outfit, or let's not take it so badly, you don't like the outfit and you don't think it's very becoming, and you don't think she thinks she made a mistake. But if you tell her she made a mistake, you know what's going to happen to the outfit? It's going in the garbage. She can't return it, and she won't wear it because you told her that. Now, if it was horrible, right, embarrassing to her to wear this, so then you have to tell her the truth because you don't want to embarrass her. But you just don't like it. So she says, you like this outfit? I just got it for $50. If you tell her you don't like it, she's not going to wear it again. So tell her, yeah, it's nice. It's a nice outfit. You're lying. But you're lying for her dignity, for herself, not for you. You have, right, Rivka tells Yaakov, go to your father Yitzhak and tell him you're Esav. Right? Tell him you're Esav. So you can get the brachas. But he's not Esav. Right? Abraham tells Sarah, we're going to Egypt, tell him you're my sister. Don't tell him you're my wife. But that's a lie. She's not his sister. She is his wife. Yitzhak tells his wife, we're going to Egypt. Tell him you're my sister, not my wife. But he's not. God tells Abraham, your wife said she can't have children because she's too old. Well, she didn't say that. She said, you're too old. But he doesn't tell him that. That's a lie. These are all lies. But in every case, the lie is always for the benefit of the person who's hearing it, not for the person who's saying it, for the person who hears it. Yes?
I mean, somebody once said that Avram paid for the lie. Is that true? Is that how you...
You mean because Sarah was taken? Well, I mean, the ramifications still happen, but not necessarily because he lied. Because if he hadn't lied, they would have taken her, according to him, they would have taken her and killed him. Because they said like this, we can't, in the case of Pharaoh taking away Abraham's wife, they understood you can't take a married woman and marry her. She's married. But you can take a widow, so I'll kill him.
Okay, I didn't say the context, like that God punished him. Is that possible?
It's possible, but the idea is that the lie in of itself was nothing wrong with it. He did nothing wrong. There are certain times when it's a mitzvah to lie. Right? I have it all the time when I'm talking to people who are really sick, they're in the hospital, and they need hope. So you lie, right? You give them hope, and there is hope. It's not really a lie, right? I mean, there's a 1% chance, but you tell them anyways, and they might make it. It might happen, but one thing's for sure: if you tell them they're not gonna, because they give up. So you give people hope. There are times when lying is good. That's why the Torah doesn't say don't lie. It says stay away from lies. Don't lie if you don't have to, but there are times when you have to. And that's why you'll always find that whenever they lie in the Torah, Rashi always says the same thing. Rashi says, he didn't say that. He said this. And you say, oh, that's so silly. Like he says like this, Yaakov goes for the bracha from his father Yitzhak. Right? He wants to take Esav's bracha. Right? His mother tells him, take Esav's bracha. Tell him you're Esav. So the Yitzhak's blind. So what he does is he puts a fur on his arm, and because Esav was very hairy and Yaakov wasn't. So he's not blind. So he puts his hand on Yaakov's arm and he feels the hair. So it's got to be Esav, right? And he says to him, "It's the hands of Esav, but it's the voice of Yaakov. Who are you?" So he says, "It is I, Esav, your older son." That's what he says, right? So that's a lie, right? So Rashi says, oh, he didn't lie. He said, it is I, period. Esav's your older son. Right? Now, that's silly. Who do you think he's going to trick somebody? Like, we know that his intent was to lie. The words were a lie. So why does he say that? So this is very important, because Rashi does it every single time. Whenever you see somebody not telling the truth, Rashi says, he didn't lie, and then he shows you how you can change the wording a little bit. And that's because there's two parts to a lie. One thing is, there are times when you're allowed to lie, when it's a mitzvah to lie, and it'll help somebody. But if you do it too often, you'll become a liar. and then it'll be easy for you to lie when you're not supposed to. If you don't tell the truth so often, it becomes easy to not tell the truth. Like any other thing we do. You get habitual. It becomes easy. So what they did is that they used to make a point of speaking ambiguously. They didn't literally would lie. Rashi tells you, he didn't say, I'm Esav. He said, I am me, Esav, your older son. Meaning that he didn't want the words to come out of his mouth that says, I am Esav, because that's a blatant, bald-faced lie. And then if he does that, he'll become used to lying. So he says it in a way that he's not literally using the words of a lie, even though his intent is to lie. So it's not that he didn't lie, it's that he didn't use the words of a lie, so that the next time he has to do this, he's not accustomed to lying. That's the whole idea. So you'll find that every time that he says that. So here in this case, God tells Abraham, Sarah said, I'm too old. Because the point was that Abraham should teach Sarah what God can do, that God can do anything. So Sarah learned that, and that's what happens here. And then it says that that she gets pregnant, and she has a child, and a year later she has the child, who is Yitzchak. Right? Why did I tell you that this was Pesach? Because we know Yitzchak's born on Pesach, but how do we know? Because it says when they actually feed him, he gives them matzah. It says that they eat matzah. If you read the words in the Torah, where it says what the food was, instead of saying loaves of bread, it says she made for him matzah. And of course, you don't have to eat matzah because you don't have the story of going out of Egypt. Didn't happen yet. But Abraham fulfilled the Torah, right, himself. So well, it's in here rather than using up our time, but we find that. So this is the introduction to this, to get to know Abraham and Sarah. And then Abraham, he goes to Sarah. You see here, if you look in the Hebrew on 81 in the English. So Hashem says to Abraham, why is it that Sarah laughs, saying, shall I in truth bear a child, though I am so old? Is there anything beyond Hashem? God says to Abraham. At the appointed time I will return to you at this time next year, the angel says, and Sarah will have a son. So Abraham goes to Sarah to teach her. So Sarah denies it. She says, I didn't laugh. Right? I didn't laugh. Well, we know she laughed, right? For she was frightened. She was afraid that she did something wrong. But he says, no, you laughed. So, right? So he tells her what she did wrong. And then it says the men got up and they look out to Sodom, and Avraham walks with them to escort them. So this is also, this idea of escorting them is part of the law of having visitors. When you invite someone to your home, part of it is escorting them. That they make someone feel, I don't want you to leave. I'm going to escort you out of respect. I'm not going to just say goodbye and lock the door. Right? I'm going to come outside, take a few steps with you, right? A little bit. So Avraham escorts them also. And then we have the story of Sodom, of what happens there. And this whole next page of 83, going on to 85, Hashem and Avraham are negotiating. So Hashem says, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous people in the city, then I'll spare the city. So Abraham says, well, okay, I desire to speak to my Lord, although I am but dust and ash. What if there's 50 people should lack 5? What if there's only 45 people? Would you destroy the city if there's only 45? And God says, no, I wouldn't do it. And Abraham says, well, if you wouldn't do 45, how about if there's only 40? God says, no, I wouldn't do it. Right? Would God be upset if I asked you, what if there were only 30? Would you not destroy the city? He says, yeah, right, I wouldn't destroy the city. It gets all the way down to 10. I would not destroy on account of 10. Hashem departed when he had finished speaking to Avram, and Avram went back to his place. Then, of course, there weren't 10. And he destroys the city, and then the next section, right? And here, if you see, the angels go to Sodom, the second paragraph, and he urged them very much. So they turned towards him and came to his house. He made a feast for them and baked matzah. Right? So here you see the matzah, and they ate. This is right before they leave to go destroy Sodom. Right? And then he asks them where they're going, and they're going out to destroy the city. Right? And they want Abraham to save, that Lot should be saved. And this is the whole story now, beginning on 87, that which I can only really paraphrase, so we should stop soon, is that Abraham now is going to Sodom with them. The angel going to Sodom, they have to save Lot. Right? And we know that Lot and his daughters and his wife escape. His son-in-laws don't believe in God. They don't believe that he's going to destroy the city, so they laugh at them. They stay behind, and they're killed. Lot's wife leaves with them, but she's torn between the life of Sodom and the outside, so she looks back. Like philosophically, she's yearning to go back, and she dies. So all that's left now is Lot and his 2 daughters. Then they go into a cave, and then, I'm going to paraphrase it. They go into a cave, and it says, right, that when they go into this, it goes on to, let's see where it is. They go into this cave. They realize, they look out, and so as far as they can tell, the whole world's been destroyed. You had the flood not that long ago, because the world was terrible. So now they're living in Sodom, and they know Sodom is not a good place, even though they happen to like it there. Lot and his daughters, right, they like it there, but it's not a good place to be. So they see that Sodom is destroyed. As far as they know, the entire world is destroyed. God's going to start over again. And guess who's left? Us 2, right, 2 sisters and their father. They say, well, we can't let human beings be destroyed. We have to have a child with our father, because there's nobody left in the world. It's only us. So they go and they get their father drunk, and they have relations with him, and they both get pregnant. And one of them names a child Moab, and one names them Ammon. And the younger one calls him Ammon, the older one calls her son Moab. And why? Because the name Ammon means from my people. Right? In other words, this is incest. I had a child from my people. She's discreet. But the older sister is chutzpahdik. She doesn't care. She does it right in your face. She says, Moab, from my father. This child comes from my father. My father and I had relations. And they realize, of course, very quickly that they made a mistake, that there were other people around, and only Sodom was destroyed. And the older sister doesn't care because of it, and the younger sister has a certain amount of embarrassment for what she did. And now we have these 2 people, Moab and Ammon, who create nations. The nation of Moab, for instance, Ruth, the famous Ruth the Moabite, comes from Moab. Right? She comes from that nation. They're related to us because Lot was a nephew of Abraham, and these are his children, illegitimately, through incest. And that's what happens. And that's why the people of Ammon and Moab, in the original form, were known as being sexually corrupt. That all kinds of things would go on in their society because of where they came from. They were legitimizing what they did, so their lives were full of that. So you have this whole story about that, and then you have a story with Abraham where he tells this king, the king of Gerar, that his wife is his sister rather than his wife, and he goes and he takes her away because she's not married, thinking that he can have her, and he gets sick. Right? He gets sick, and he goes back to him and says, like, Abraham, what did you do to me? You made me sick, right? Well, because he took his wife. So he says, what do you mean, what did I do to you? And that we say from here, there's a famous example of how the non-Jews have often treated the Jews. We're going to go and take away something from you, and when it doesn't work out right, we say it's your fault. Right? We're going to make the Jews live in the ghetto, and they're all going to have to live together, and then suddenly a black plague comes and starts killing everybody, and the Jews don't die. Why not? Because they're not interacting with you. You made them live in a ghetto, so they have nothing. They don't come into contact with you, so they don't get the virus for black plague. Plus, the Jews back then used to wash. Right? They had the mikvahs and things. Jews bathed. In society, people didn't bathe. In Europe, there was a belief that if you bathed, then you could, it wasn't good for you. It would make you weak. So what they did is they didn't bathe much, and instead they used to wear a very heavy cologne. That's where the whole idea of cologne comes from, because they smelled. So they would wear cologne because they didn't want to get weak from bathing. The Jews, on the other hand, had the Jewish culture, which is that you bathe before Shabbos and you bathe before the mikvah. So people would bathe regularly among the Jews. So the Jews didn't get the black plague, and the non-Jews, many of them did. And they came and they said the Jews caused the black plague, right? It's not the Jews caused it. You made it so that we weren't going to get it. You made it so that we don't interact with you. You made it that we should live in our own area, right? We wash, you don't wash. So all of the things that would cause the plague, you're doing it, and you saved us. But you're saying we caused it. Right? It's the same idea. Abraham knows that they take his wife, right? Because if he says it's his wife, they'll kill him, and then she'll be available to be taken. So he says it's my sister, and they take her. And he said, I only took her because you said she was available. If I knew she was your wife, I wouldn't have taken her. it's your fault that I got sick. So Abraham says, no, he knows it's not my fault. You took my wife. You took, even if that way, you took my sister without permission. You just raped her. You just took her away. How can you do that? Right? It doesn't matter. It's your fault. It's always the Jews' fault. That's what they're saying here. Right? We can't really go into this to two very important stories. It's the story of Yishmael with his mother being sent away, and then finally, of course, the famous Akedah, the offering of Isaac, is there at the end. But there's just one important thing to say about the offering of Isaac. Right? The Akedah is Yitzchak, right? The binding of Isaac. So we have to ask the question: is who is it really that did the big deal? Who did the big deal here? Was it Abraham, who was prepared to kill his son, who, by the way, according to most opinions, was 37 years old? He understood what was going on. Or was it Isaac, who allowed himself to be offered as a sacrifice? Like, who's really giving much, right? Certainly it's Isaac. I mean, it's a total commitment. It's a sacrifice. He's giving up his life. Abraham, sadly, is going to live the rest of his life knowing he killed his son, and whatever future he thinks he's going to have from his son is not going to happen because his son's dead. But he's alive, right? And life goes on. But Yitzchak's dead. But nevertheless, we call it the binding of Isaac, but we talk about how Abraham was the one who did so much. So if Isaac was a baby, so I could say, okay, it was Abraham. But Isaac was no baby. He knew what was going on. He understood the situation. And we understand many important things from this. One of them we have to realize is that Abraham went around the world telling people, don't offer your children to your God. God doesn't want you to kill people. God doesn't want human sacrifices. God doesn't want your children. He dedicated his life to this, and then suddenly he has to go and kill his own son. So that means everything that he had said was nullified. It had no meaning. Because everyone saw this guy's a hypocrite. He tells everybody we can't kill our children, and he goes to kill his son. Right? It totally destroys everything he stood for. Plus, he had to kill his son. And to do that act, right? It's like, although I don't quote Golda Meir much, Golda Meir once said about the Arabs that when the time comes and there's be a judgment from God, right, she says that the real judgment is not going to be that the Arabs killed our children. The real judgment is that the Arabs forced us to kill their children. Because you put us in a situation where we had to do something that's so against our nature. We're merciful people, to make us do this kind of thing because of what you put us in. That's really the most difficult part. That's the binding of Isaac. Abraham is the one who is a kind of person. Abraham, who represents not doing this kind of stuff, has to go and do it. The fact that he's prepared to do it is an enormous act of faith on his part. That God tells him to do it, you do it, even though it goes against everything. You can imagine you have a guy like dedicates his entire life that you should be a vegetarian, but on the side he's really eating meat. And his whole life he's writing books and he's promoting vegetarianism, and then one day you'll see an article in the National Enquirer that he eats hamburgers for lunch every day. So you'd be told everything he says is a joke. You think that's ridiculous. He wants me to be vegetarian, but he shouldn't be a vegetarian. So the fact is, Abraham doesn't want us to kill his son, to kill our children, but he can kill his son. So here for Abraham, it has to live with this idea as well. So it was extremely difficult for him. For Isaac, it was 1 second. That is 1 second. It's like they say, I've asked this question before, when you're in a situation with a bunch of Jewish people, you ask them, who among us, if we were in a situation and you had no other choice than this, convert or die? Convert, right? You can convert to my religion, whatever, Christianity, let's say, or die. Right? This is what they come up to you and they got a sword at your head. Convert or die. Not run away, nothing. You're going to either convert or die. What do? Most Jews will tell you they'd rather die. I want to let them do that to me. I'll die as a Jew. So when I was a kid one time, this came up. I was at a conference, and nobody in this room was really religious, or even understood what it meant to be religious, except for the speaker. And the speaker asked us this question: would you die as a Jew? And almost everyone said yes. And then he says, so would you live as a Jew? And of course we didn't understand necessarily what the question meant, but when you think about it, it's much harder to live as a Jew than it is to die as a Jew, because dying as a Jew takes 1 second. And yes, it's a big thing. It's an enormous thing. But if you're inspired, it only takes 1 second. To live as a Jew is day in and day out, 24 hours a day. That's hard. For Isaac to give up his life was 1 second. Not that it's a small thing, but for Abraham to take his life means the rest of his life he's haunted with that. And the rest of his life he's haunted by the fact that everything he had taught people is being ridiculed now. That was why it was so difficult for him. So that's just a little introduction to it. We'll talk more if you come on Shabbos. You'll hear more about this, okay? Yes?
Rothman, you said Lot's, I have to think, Lot's 2 sons, the bad one, not that they're bad, you said that one of them are worse than the other one, and they're doing different things. That generation coming down to today.
We don't know who they are anymore.
What do you mean?
We don't know what tribe people come from.
Yeah, but the generation coming down and down and down, with those kind of things or whatever it is today, would it affect it? And
sure, we believe in spiritual DNA. You have an effect from the spiritual acts of your forefathers, of your parents, of your grandparents, and so forth. But you always have free will, which means that nothing will force you to do it. They always give an example. If you've grown up in a house where everybody in your house is a murderer, and you decide to be a thief, among them you're a righteous person, because you're only stealing. But the fact is, how could you do that? How could you only steal if you're in a house where everybody murders? You must think murder is okay, because you can choose to realize that murder is wrong. You can choose it, or you can just go along with everyone and do it. It's up to you. Okay. Thank you all very much.